Hello everyone and welcome to a new series I'm going to call Book Club or Bookshelf. I haven't decided yet. You'll know because it's in the title. But as of right now when I'm filming, I don't know what I'm going to call this. Anyway, so the other day I'm going through my bookshelf and I found something I hadn't seen in a long time, and that is, let me get this closer, my copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Now, this is my favorite novel. I haven't seen this book in probably about 2-3 years. I had honestly thought I'd lost it. So, it got me thinking about this book and all the good times I had reading it. And that made me want to do this. So yeah, we are going to review a book most people in this generation have never read. I'd like to say this is going to change that, but I know only a few people are ever going to see this. Oh well. I'm going to begin. So, starting off, we see the book is about an inch thick. Don't know how tall. I'm not going to bother with that. In the beginning, we have a little biography on Jules Verne. It's just a one-page biography. Yeah. Then, how's it? There is a table of contents. I have no idea how to review a book, so. There is a part 2. This book is pretty big, but I really like it. I like big books. There's the rest of the chapters. Alright. It features an introduction called The Ardent Blasphemers by Ray Bradbury. And it lasts a good couple pages here. Let me see how long it is. That's a good 14 pages. And it compares Jules Verne to Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, another one of my favorite books. How they are American-styled authors, writing about great monsters in the sea and mad captains. Mad Captain Ahab, Mad Captain Nemo, the Nautilus, Moby Dick. It does a pretty good job of comparing them, I think. But honestly, I think this is the better book compared to Moby Dick. I think this has more interesting characters. The plot in this, when I first read this, I couldn't stop reading this. I was in the middle of class, and I had this hidden in my history books, or whatever class it was. I was sitting there with this hidden in my book, just reading, crossing my fingers that the teacher didn't call on me, because I'd end up reading this aloud. I couldn't not focus on this. It's a really good book. Ahead there are spoilers for one of the greatest books of all time. This road we travel is not for the faint of heart, so turn back now if this is applicable to you. You have been warned. Set in the year 1866, this book has 4 main characters, as well as numerous secondary characters, all of which are called crewmen. Okay, so, number 1, Monsieur Aronnax. Aronnax is the world's leading expert on marine biology at the time. Then you have his assistant, Consul. Consul I'm reading from the book, is, quote, a brave Belgian, impassive by nature, regular habits as a matter of principle, eager out of habit, scarcely ever taken aback by life's surprises, very clever with his hands, fit for any kind of service, and the sort of person who, in spite of having a name meaning advice, never gave any even when asked. Consul is also very knowledgeable, having spent a lot of time around Monsieur Aronnax. He's picked up on marine biology, and it says he spent a lot of time with people at the botanical gardens. That's it. He was very well versed in natural history classification. It says with an acrobat's ease, he could rush up and down the ladder of phyla, divisions, classes, subclasses, orders, families, genera, subgenera, species, and varieties. But that's where his knowledge ends. Then we have Ned Land, a harpooner. He's known to have harpooned just about every kind of whale in the ocean. And these three are brought together by the United States Navy in an attempt to hunt down a sea monster, a giant narwhal, according to most experts, that is sinking every single boat that it comes across. They're brought together by Commander Farragut aboard the Abraham Lincoln. That's his boat. Apparently, it only took a year for them to build a boat and name it after the guy after he was shot. Farragut's not very important to the story, so we're not talking about Farragut. What is it? Well, I guess we'll talk a little bit about him. Let's see. Aronnax describes him as a kind of Knight of Rhodes, and that either Farragut would kill the giant narwhal, or the narwhal would kill Commander Farragut. There would be no middle course. But by far, the most complex character in this book is its antagonist. The antihero, one of the greatest antiheroes, and I consider the greatest antihero of anything, Captain Nemo. Captain Nemo is described as such by Monsieur Aronnax upon their first meeting. The other person deserves a more detailed description. A disciple of Gratiolet or Engal would have been able to read his face like an open book. I could easily make out his dominant characteristics, self-confidence, from the fine way his head was set on his shoulders, and from his look of cold assurance. Calm, because his rather pale skin showed his coolness of blood. Energy, evidenced by the rapid way he would contract his eyebrows. And finally, courage, for his deep breathing indicated an expansive, vital nature. In addition, this man was proud. His firm, calm look seemed to reflect thoughts of high nature, and one could see in everything, in his bodily and facial movements, an undeniable openness of manner. I felt myself involuntarily reassured in his presence, and I predicted that our interview would have a favorable outcome. Whether he was 35 or 50, I could not tell. He was tall, with a broad forehead, a straight nose, firm mouth, splendid teeth, and delicate hands, slender and long, eminently physical, to use a term from palmistry, or in other words, worthy of serving a high-minded, passionate soul. This man seemed one of the most admirable I had ever met. What strange detail! His eyes, which were rather far apart, had an almost 90-degree range of vision. This ability, I was later able to verify it, was backed by eyesight even better than Ned Land's. When this man fixed his look upon some object, he would frown and squint in such a way as to limit his range of vision, and then he would look. And what a look! How he could magnify objects made smaller by distance. How he could penetrate to your very soul. How he could pierce the surface of water so impenetrable to our eyes and read the ocean depths. Furthermore, we actually have some more backstory on Captain Nemo as revealed in The Mysterious Island, which, of course, we are going to get to. Nemo's name is Latin for no one, and Greek for I give what is due, which is also the same root as nemesis. Nemo is also the Latin rendering of the ancient Greek Otis, or Nobody, the pseudonym adopted by Odysseus in Greek mythology. So, the only thing we get about Nemo's backstory in 20,000 Leagues is his dislike of imperialism, and he focuses more on the British because they were the big imperialists back at the time, and the apparent loss of his family in the past. However, the mysterious island, we learn a whole lot more about the guy. He is Prince Dakar, son of a Hindu Raja of Bundelkund, I don't know, and descendant of Muslim Sultan Fateh Ali Tipu of the Kingdom of Mysore. After the First Indian War of Independence in 1857, Dakar loses his family and his kingdom. So he devotes himself to scientific research and develops the Nautilus, which we'll put up a picture later. So then he and a crew of followers cruise to sea, battle injustice and imperialism. They gather bullion from the various shipwrecks. He claims to have no interest in the world above, but he does intervene to help those in need, such as giving salvage treasure to participants in the Cretan Revolt during 1866 to 1869. He saves a pearl hunter from a shark, and he saves the three main characters after he sings to Abraham Lincoln. And in the mysterious island, he protects other castaways. Like many actual Indian princes from the era, Nemo has a English education. He spent his youth studying and touring all across Europe. He's fluent in French, English, Latin, and German. He also speaks French unaccented, which throws Aronnax off a little bit. So he has to use the way that Nemo looks to tell he's from southern latitudes, but he can't pick him as Indian. Nautilus's library is very revealing as well. It shows that he is very familiar with European culture and arts. He's also an accomplished player of the organ. It's said he died of old age aboard the Nautilus in Mysterious Island. Enough fangirling over what I consider to be one of the greatest characters in fictional history and the greatest anti-hero. Let's get down to the plot. Chapter 1 starts off titled A Shifting Reef. The year 1866 was marked by a strange event, an unexplainable occurrence which is undoubtedly still fresh in everyone's memory. Those living in coastal towns or in the interior of continents are aroused by all sorts of rumors. But it was seafaring people who were particularly excited. Merchants, ship owners, captains, skippers, and masters of Europe and America, naval officers of all countries and the various governments of both continents were deeply concerned over the matter. Several ships had recently met at sea, quote, an enormous thing, a long slender object which was sometimes phosphorescent and which was infinitely larger and faster than a whale. The facts concerning this apparition, entered in various logbooks, agreed closely with one another as to the structure of the object or creature in question. The incredible speed of its movements, the surprising power of its locomotion, and strange life with which it seemed endowed. It was a member of the whale family. It was larger than any so far classified by scientists. Neither Cuvier, Lacépède, Dumeril, or Quatrefages, I don't know if I pronounced any of those right, would have admitted that such a monster could exist unless they had seen it with their own scientists' eyes. Taking an average of observations made at different times and rejecting those timid evaluations which said the object was only 200 feet long, and also putting aside those exaggerated opinions which it was a mile wide and 3 miles long, one could nevertheless conclude that this phenomenal creature was considerably larger than anything at the time recognized by ichthyologists, if it existed at all. But it did exist. There was no denying this fact any longer, and considering the natural inclination of the human brain towards objects of wonder, one can understand the excitement produced throughout the world by this supernatural apparition. In any case, the idea of putting it into the realm of fiction had to be abandoned. So, something's out there in the ocean. Let's read the encounters. July 20th, 1866. The steamer, the Governor Higginson of Calcutta, of the Calcutta and Bernack Steam Navigation Company, encountered this thing 5 miles east of Australia. Baker thought it was just some unknown... Captain Baker first thought it was an unknown reef. He was even getting ready to plot its exact position, but then 2 columns of water spurted out of the object and rose with a loud whistling noise to a height of 150 feet. Unless this reef contained a geyser, it was an unknown species of aquatic mammal. And then, on the 23rd of, July 23rd of 1866, 3 days later, it's again in Pacific waters. The Christopher Columbus of the West India and Pacific Steam Navigation Company saw this creature. They concluded that if it was only sighted 3 days ago by Australia, it moves very quick. Separated on the globe by 1,500 nautical miles, the locations of the sightings are. 2 weeks later, and 4,300 miles from the last spot, the Helvetia of the Champagne Nationale and the Shannon of the Royal Mail Steamship Company passed on opposite courses in that part of the Atlantic lying between the U.S. and Europe. They signaled one another that they had seen the monster at 42 degrees 15 north latitude and 60 degrees 35 west longitude. In this simultaneous observation, they felt able to judge the creature's minimum length at more than 350 feet, since it was larger than both ships each, of which measured 330 feet overall. Largest whales, the Kulamak and the Angulik, which live in waters around the Aleutian Islands, never exceed 180 feet in length, if that much. And there's a couple others. And this monster is talked about in every major city of the world. People think it's Moby Dick. They think that's a true story now. They think it's the Kraken. And for 6 months, the scientists are arguing whether or not this thing is real or not. But naturally, there came a point where they could not deny that this thing was out there. March 5th, 1867, the Moravian of the Montreal Ocean Company struck on its starboard side a rock indicated on no chart. It had been cruising at 13 knots under the combined force of the wind and its 400 horsepower engines. Had it not been for the superior quality of its hull, the Moravian undoubtedly would have been split open by the blow and sunk with the 237 passengers it was bringing back from Canada. This might have been forgotten, Aronnax goes on to explain. If 3 weeks later it had not been reenacted under similar circumstances, end quote. On April 13th, 1867, the Scotia was sailing 15 degrees 12 longitude and 45 degrees 37 latitude. On a clear sea with a moderate breeze, it was traveling at a speed of 13.43 knots, propelled by its 1,000 horsepower engines. At 4:17 in the afternoon, the passengers were gathered on the big lounge having their tea. A slight blow was felt against the hull of the Scotia, and the quarter slightly behind the port wheel. Scotia had not struck something, it had been struck, and by some object which was much more cutting or perforating than blunt. The blow had seemed so slight that nobody on board would have given a second thought had not the men working below rushed upon to the bridge and shouted, "We're sinking! We're sinking!" Passengers were very scared, but Captain Anderson assured them there was no real danger. It was the 7 watertight compartments that could therefore face any leak with impunity. The captain went down into the hold. 5th compartment was flooded. Speed which had happened proved that the leak was considerable. This compartment did not contain any boilers, and so they were able to keep going. The sailors dove into the water to check the damage and found there was a 6-foot across hole in the hull. They couldn't plug this up, so the crippled ship had to make it back to Cape Clear. Naturally, now people are starting to freak out, right? So they turn to the one man who should know what's doing this. Monsieur Aronnax. This is where he gets involved. He had to give a carefully written article about this. This is what he wrote. Therefore, since all other theories must be rejected, one is forced to admit the existence of some marine animal of extraordinary power. We know nothing about the great ocean depths. Soundings have been unable to reach them. What takes place in those remote canyons? What creatures live or can live 12 or 15 miles below the surface? How are such animals built? We can scarcely even guess. These questions go hand in hand with the problem under discussion. For either we know all the varieties of creatures which inhabit our planet, or we do not. If we do not know them all, if nature still holds some secrets for us where life in the sea is concerned, then nothing could be more reasonable than to admit the existence of fish or whales of a kind unknown to us, especially built to inhabit the unfathomable depths of the ocean, in which some event, whim, or desire brings to the surface at long intervals of time. If, on the contrary, we know all species of living things, we must try to find the animal in question among the marine creatures which are already classified. And in the case, I would favor admitting the existence of a giant narwhal. The ordinary narwhal, or unicorn fish, is a kind of whale which grows to a length of 60 feet. Multiply this 5 or 10 times, give this fish strength in proportion to its size, and you will have the narwhal under discussion. It would have the proportions observed by the officers of the Shannon, the weapon required to explain the hole in the Scotia, and the strength needed to penetrate the hull of a steamer. For the narwhal is armed with a kind of ivory sword, or halberd as some naturalists put it. It has a tusk as hard as steel. Occasionally these tusks are found embedded in the bodies of other kinds of whales, against which the narwhal always wins. Others have been removed, not without difficulty, from the hulls of ships which have pierced clean through, as easy as drill pierces a barrel. The museum in the Faculty of Medicine in Paris owns one of these tusks 7 feet, 4.5 inches long, and 16 inches thick at the base. Or 19 inches thick at the base. My bad. Now imagine this weapon 10 times larger, and the fish 10 times stronger. Imagine it traveling at a speed of 20 miles an hour, multiply the speed by its mass, and you will have a blow capable of producing the required catastrophe. Therefore, until I receive fuller information, I shall be of the opinion that this is a unicorn fish of colossal proportions, armed not with a halberd, but with a real battering ram like a warship, and which it could equal in both size and strength. This might be the explanation of this unexplainable phenomenon, unless it is an illusion in spite of which it has been glimpsed, seen, felt, and experienced, which is still possible. Which he then goes on to admit, that last bit was his cowardice, because he has a reputation to uphold. He can't, and if it's not there, he can't be considered one of the crazies who thought this monster was out there. He didn't want to be the laughingstock. An unfortunate thing of scientists even today. Monsieur Aronnax then returns from a very long trip, and in his mailbox he finds a letter from the Secretary of the Navy telling him, hey, we want you to come along with us to kill this monster that is attacking these boats. And he feels, as tired as he is, that this is his his occupational duty. To find this monster, to study it, and to rid the world of it, as he put it. So he and Consul leave, meet Commander Farragut and Ned Land. They chase after where this monster has been sighted in its projected course. They track it down, they find it, they fight it, and it sinks Abraham Lincoln. Consul, the Monsieur, and Ned go into the water. They land aboard a floating island, at first is what they think, but then they realize they're sitting upon this monster that they were chasing, waiting for it to submerge and drown them. But, to their surprise, men come out from this monster and bring them down below, where they meet Captain Nemo and their adventure begins. Now we are introduced to the setting. The Nautilus. The Nautilus is the brainchild of Captain Nemo upon his exile from land. It was built on a deserted island by him and his crew. He designed it and helped them build it. The vessel is powered by electricity. I think it's also partly steam powered. It's been a long time, like I said. It can light up the darkness. It has massive viewing ports. They do have to get air from the surface. It has a massive horn that it uses for self-defense. It has a lounge that puts the best lounges in America and Europe to shame. A library better than any university. And perhaps its most important feature for the story is I forget what it's called, but the dinghy is what I think they call it. A little boat that they use when they do go on shore for supplies, which is very rare, or whenever they deliver aid to people in need of help from oppression. It's also what Aronnax and his friends used to escape. Sometimes aboard the vessel, you will hear the organ being played by none other than Captain Nemo himself. Nemo keeps an extensive log of all the creatures they encounter on their voyages, and none have been classified by science. So this is a dream come true for Aronnax. Things are off to a rocky start for our crew of adventurers. At first, they want to go free. Nemo can't allow this. He won't kill them. This is what makes Nemo an interesting character, an interesting villain. That's why he's an anti-hero. He sank the boat. He feels terrible about all the people that died from that, though, or that might have died for that. And he doesn't want to have to kill these guys, because he respects the work of Aronnax. And so he won't let them leave. And they come to terms with it, though Ned is always talking with Consul and Monsieur about escape, whenever it's just them. But they stay on the boat for a good 2 years. They discover Atlantis, all manner of sea life unknown to them. A couple tragedies along the way, a couple crewmen died. All the while, Aronnax is just in awe of this vessel, of the wonders of the sea, and of its mad captain, with a grudge against the surface world. There's not a whole lot, really, I can go into with the amount of time we're taking. This is a very big book. There's a lot in it, and we are only about here in the plot. Okay, no, that's not correct, but we're about here. Okay, we're only at chapter 9 with where we're talking about right now. It goes on to like 47. There's a lot in this book, and I don't have time to talk about it all, and that would deprive you of the pleasure of reading this book. The wonders of this book, of Captain Nemo's vessel, of the home he built for himself and its men. It's honestly, I think it's one of the greatest science fiction stories of all time. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, I am a big fan of Captain Nemo. So, if you ever see 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, you should pick it up, you should read it. Okay, I'm going to say this about every book on this. It's not for everyone. No book is for everyone. But if you like science fiction, this book is a good one to start with. Well, not to start with, because if you like science fiction, you've already started. If you like interesting character, you'll like this book. It's amazing, it's well written, it's beautiful. Jules Verne is my favorite author because of this book. I've read a couple other of his books, but I love this one. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. A score of 10 out of 10. I'm not going to recommend that you see any live-action adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, though. Because I haven't seen a single one that I liked. They try to shove everything in this book into one movie, which doesn't work. So they take out a bunch of good stuff, such as character development, especially towards Captain Nemo. Every movie I've seen has painted Nemo as a madman out to kill everyone on the surface world. They don't explain why he takes those three, Ned, Consul, and Aronnax, in those movies. They just... Nemo's out to kill the people, and he's going to make these people watch for whatever reason. He's not going to let them go, so it's not to have them go back to the surface world and be like, hey, there's a madman out there in the ocean that wants us to tell you that he's trying to kill you all. So that's not it. It doesn't give a motive as to why he saved him. It doesn't make him a good guy. And that's what I like so much about Captain Nemo is he's not the bad guy. He's not the good guy either, but he is definitely not the bad guy. And other things that these movies do wrong is I've seen one that made Consul a woman as opposed to a man. In that movie he was, or I guess she was Aronnax's niece as opposed to his assistant. No, except for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Captain Nemo's always a white guy. And his background states in Mysterious Island that he is Indian. So that's another thing. I'm very sticklery when it comes to characters being like they are in the source material. Even so much as changing their ethnicity can upset me. And I know it's probably just being a butthurt fanboy and all that, but that's how I am. So, Nemo not being Indian upsets me. Consul being a woman upsets me. But moving right along, I guess the reason that Consul was a woman in that one was because other than if they didn't do that, there'd be no girls in it. And that's technically true. There's no girls in this book. Like, at all. There's not even a mermaid. I can't believe I just said that. That was kind of funny, I think. Anyway, so I wouldn't recommend the movie. I would definitely recommend the book. I think I heard somewhere that they're working on another live-action adaptation that's supposed to be good this time. Well, I'll wait, and if there does come out another one, I will go see it. But until then, I'll stick to the bookshelf. Thanks for watching.